Is all 3 in the tender? Shoot.
$1 a year pitching shoes for Nike. But as Roberta Baskin finds in this exclusive investigation, just doing it doesn't do it for some Nike workers.
This is Nike Town in Chicago, where shoppers pay dearly for the hottest shoes in the world.
This one was 97.87. Total is 92.44. 78.36 is your total.
$140 for these cross trainers.
This model, ma'am, is 125.
If you look closely, Nikes are sporting a new label, Made in Vietnam. The signs are everywhere of an American invasion in search of cheap labor. Millions of people who are literate, disciplined, and desperate for jobs. This is Nike Town, near what used to be called Saigon, one of 5 factories Nike doesn't own, but subcontracts to make 1 million shoes a month. It takes 25,000 workers, mostly young women, to just do it. But the workers here don't share in Nike's huge profit. They work 6 days a week for only $40 a month, just 20 cents an hour. One worker, Lap, invited us to the room she rents near the Samyang factory. This is your room? Her basic wage, even as a sewing team leader, still doesn't amount to the minimum wage.
This says you get $42 a month, and you work 6 days a week.
Of course, workers do get lunch on the job.
This is what you give them to eat.
But those meal tickets cost another 9 cents a day. Lap isn't allowed to bring her own lunch into the factory. She wants to study English, but at 28, Lap must support herself and cannot afford to go to a university.
How healthy have you been since you had this job?
I
have lost my strength and some weight. 17 pounds.
She's down to 85 pounds. Like most of the women who make the shoes, she has little choice but to accept the low wages and long hours. Nike says it requires all subcontractors to obey local laws. But Lap has already put in much more overtime than the annual legal limit, 200 hours.
What happens if you want to leave? If you're sick or you have something you need to do or you need to take care of a relative, can you leave the factory?
It is not possible if you haven't made enough shoes. You have to meet the quota before you can go home.
But it was more than long hours that led this woman to quit. Her name is Thuy.
Can you tell me what happened?
Thuy and 14 other team leaders were singled out and punished by their Korean supervisor, Madam Beck, seen here sitting at a table with a Nike shoe she used to hit the women. It was in retaliation for some poor sewing.
She hit all the 15 team leaders in turn, from the first one to the 15th.
Did she actually beat you with part of a shoe?
Yes, she did. The beatings were widely reported in the Vietnamese newspapers as violent acts against 15 workers. Madam Beck's reply, quote, "It's not a big deal. It's just a method for managing workers."
Did she hurt you?
The physical pain didn't last long, but the pain I feel in my heart will never disappear.
Certainly there have been a number of incidents of physical abuse at work.
Robert Templer, a journalist in Vietnam, has been reporting on foreign labor issues.
How are people talking about it here in Vietnam?
It sort of crept into the vocabulary. The phrase to Nike is essentially to take out one's frustrations on a fellow worker.
The word has become a verb, to Nike someone?
In certain areas, yeah.
Armed with reports that abuses at this factory triggered 3 strikes, we wanted to talk with workers.
Government officials set up a meeting for us here at the Samyang Vietnam factory. But when we arrived, factory management had changed its mind and turned us away. All we can do is wait here to talk to workers at the end of their Saturday shift.
We waited for hours, and then, just as the factory gates opened, so did the sky. Still, we managed to find some of the women who had been beaten.
Here you are. Here.
After drawing flying off, we sat down to talk at a small cafe across the road from the factory. Lap was among them.
The supervisor used a shoe upper without a sole on it.
And what did she do? On the head?
She hit us on the side of the neck and the head. All of the 15 team leaders. Each person was hit 2 or 3 times.
One woman after another confirmed the beating.
I am team leader number 11, and when they came to leader number 10, and I saw what was happening, that's when I ran away. 2 people went to the hospital, and I was one of them.
For the first time ever, a foreigner was put on trial for assaulting workers. Madame Beck was convicted, but allowed to leave the country, causing a huge outcry. Even after the conviction, more abuses were revealed. A woman's mouth taped shut because she was talking during working hours. 45 women disciplined, forced to kneel down and raise their hands in the sky for 25 minutes straight.
We can in no way accept this.
Madame Tang is a senior government labor official.
You know, our customs, culture, and courtesies are in no way less than those in America. When somebody uses that means of punishment with women, we see that as a real offense.
But the most recent incident may be the most disturbing of all. A Korean supervisor molested Vietnamese female workers, and soon after, he fled Vietnam.
He broke the law. Someone has to bear the responsibility.
Nike says the supervisor's behavior was unacceptable, and steps have been taken to prevent it from happening again. But somehow in all the newspaper reports about the labor abuses, you never see Nike's name. Remember, Nike doesn't own the factories. It's Korean subcontractors do. And it's the Koreans who've been catching the blame, while Nike keeps a low profile.
They see this matter as totally unrelated to them. They just stand behind someone else.
How are other American companies faring in Vietnam? Coca-Cola is doing just fine, owning and operating its own factories. Why not just subcontract all of this?
I think you want to control your own destiny. Instead of cheap wages, we'd rather look at productivity.
Coca-Cola workers are offered English classes and sales training. The pay is about twice the Vietnamese minimum wage.
Our general laborers would make about $80 a month.
But all these Nike workers want is a decent wage. What would you like to tell Nike?
Higher pay. I'd like to buy a pair of Nikes as a souvenir, but how could I ever have enough money?
With factory managers unwilling to talk, we went to Nike headquarters in Vietnam to see the man in charge. Hi, Mr. Sato. I'm Roberta Baskin from CBS News.
Yeah?
I wanted to talk to you about the problems that you're having in the factories here. About problems with Vietnamese workers who've been hit, humiliated, sexually assaulted.
I have things to do. Thank you.
So we came back to the United States, to Nike headquarters, where they're celebrating.
Let's stop 2 for 1.